I actually don't script these lessons, and part of the reason is that this is all a big experiment for me in becoming better, and you guys are along for the ride. But I start with kind of a global concept in mind. What are we going to talk about today? And then go into the shed and literally set the cameras up, sit down, and figure out what I'm going to talk about. So how would I teach jazz to a drummer who already has a pretty good grasp of coordination and feel, and maybe has been playing some funk and gospel, and maybe even has been playing some basic jazz things, like patterns out of two of the best jazz books ever written, Syncopation by Ted Reed and Beyond Bop Drumming by John Riley, but wants to extend a little bit further. And I'll tell you right now, there's a reason why you don't see a whole lot of conceptual videos on how to play jazz. It's because it's tough to explain. Yeah, you'll see dudes teaching you a Roy Haynes lick or a Brian Blade lick, but you're not going to see people delve into, oh, so what's a framework to really atomize to teach yourself to improvise? So I went into the shed and I came up with a couple things about this, and I think it's going to be beneficial for you. So here is where I'm at with it. How to really play jazz. Two concepts. Number one, it's a cliche, but the swing feel. And when I say the swing feel, what I'm talking about more specifically is the eighth note. There are a few ways to practice this, but I think one of the best sort of untold ways to practice it is via hip-hop records. Now, for copyright reasons, I can't play On to the Next One by Jay-Z, the track that I have in the back of my head, over the stuff that I'm practicing, but playing along with hip-hop records and copying that sort of eighth note will get you deep into the swing feel, because that's what it is. That's what it is. And if you don't believe me, just watch some of the B-roll of me playing, and you tell me if you think of any of this doesn't swing. And be honest. Number two, once you have that in mind, is the major difference between jazz and non-jazz playing is not that it's from the top down, it's not that you're not supposed to hit one. Excuse me for a second while I get this off my chest. Okay? You can play jazz from the bottom up. Jazz is deep from the bottom up. Tony Williams ghosted the bass drum on all fours. Come on, guys, it's from the bottom up. And you need to put so much weight and conviction into your left foot to really play the hi-hat right, that it's definitely bottom up. So, what's the difference between a weak left foot and one that really sounds convicted? Convicted like a felon. One that really sounds like you mean it? I'll tell you. And I completely forgot what I was going to say. The difference is, you know where you're about to place it. It's that upload speed thing. And how do you get there? It's not just about 2 and 4. How do you not play the hi-hat on 2 and 4, but play with the same conviction as if you were playing it with the hi-hat on 2 and 4? Simple. You keep this conversational principle in mind. Let me show you a sort of hip-hop-esque idiom that's a great starting point for jazz. And watch what I'm doing with my foot. And now I will remove the right hand from it, so you can literally just see my right foot, left hand, and left foot. You think about it having this conversation. So I'm going to add the right hand back in. And then I'm going to start playing variations on the ride cymbal with the right hand. And don't worry about the technique for the ride cymbal. Worry about the sound. Play what feels natural and what sounds natural. If that's quarter notes at this point, then great. And finally, you'll see me switching from sort of a common swing feel with 4 on the floor and the hi-hat and 2 and 4, and going back to this sort of conversation. Okay, let's look at another one. Okay, what you're watching me play now is another sort of hip-hop-esque idiom. And don't worry, I will teach you how to come up with some of these on your own. Watch as I remove the right hand so that you're literally only seeing the conversation between my left hand and my feet. Now I'll add the right hand back in, and you'll watch me vary the swing pattern on the ride cymbal. And I add a high tom. Okay, now for a variation tool that I discuss quite a bit in my videos. I make what's called a hemiola out of it by making it into a 3-beat pattern. This is just one of the many ways you can vary your vocabulary. And now I'm orchestrating again by adding a couple of toms. Okay, so how do we actually create these on our own, and what do we do with them? And I'm going to do that with two examples. Both are sort of hip-hop-ish, and I'll talk to you later about how to practice the feel about them. So the first one is literally just bass and snare with the hi-hat on quarters. Remove your right hand and simply fill in all the spaces your right hand was covering with the left foot. Simple. Now you've got a conversation happening. You can do this with practically any sort of permutation of a hip-hop groove. But let me just show you one quick little variation of this where I'm adding a couple of skipped notes leading into the bass drum and the snare, just to give the conversation a little variation. And watch me work this through the same set of variations. Now this might seem basic, but there are a million directions you can go with this. And once you start applying some of the phrasing tools, they're not going to sound cliche at all. Let me show you another example, which is sort of a halftime-ish type of thing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And exactly the same as the first. Every quarter that I was playing on the hi-hat with the right hand, I now play with the left foot. But of course, I don't play the 2 feet at the same time. Now watch as I add some variation to that same conversation, just by, again, adding a 8th note upbeat in a couple of places. And I move my right hand to the right cymbal. And now I'm adding skipped notes on the right cymbal. So you may be asking yourself at this point, great, but I can't play a hip-hop backbeat along with every jazz groove. That's not necessarily the point, but let me show you how, for instance, you might vary this right away. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. For the first pattern I played, I'm going to apply that hemiola tool again. And once I've got it going, I'm going to turn it into a 3 or 6 beat phrase that cycles. Right away, you're already getting into sort of Roy Haynes vocabulary here. And let me show you how hypothetically the second hip-hoppy groove might look if I take it through that process. Okay, so I've shown you from the ground up how the conversational principle with the left foot works and how to get out of the mindset of just thinking of your hi-hat on 2 and 4. The only other thing I want to cover in this particular installment is the time feel. So how do you practice the feel on this, besides playing along with hip-hop tracks, which is a great starting point? I use a metronomic concept that I call macro time, which is all over the 80-20 Drummer series if you want to check out more. But basically what I do is I have my metronome set to pretty arbitrarily in this case, but just because it's a medium-ish tempo, I have it set on 4/4 time, quarter note equals 90, and I'm accenting the first beat of the measure. But I reorient things in my brain so that each click of the metronome is a half note offbeat. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's a 1, 2, a 3, 4, a 1, 2, a 3, 4. You're watching this B-roll, me playing sort of improvisationally over it, but it's going to be difficult the first time you try it. So I recommend starting extremely basic. And it's okay if you want to play upbeats that line up with the metronome, like doot, do-bop, ba-boot, do-bop, ba-doot, do-bop, ba-doot. I mean, that's the essence of hip-hop. That's what makes it feel good. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Eventually you're going to increase your comfort level with this type of metronomic practice, and that will allow you to expand things. Now, even if it's difficult, I recommend that you persevere with it, because this is one of the 2 big components about swing. So, I'm going to leave you here for this lesson, but to summarize what we covered: how to play jazz if you're already a decent drummer. Number 1, it's about that swing feel, and it's about the consistency of the 8th note. Practice it along with hip-hop tracks, and practice it with the metronome on half-note offbeats, as I demonstrated. And number 2, the left foot is having a conversation with the snare drum and the right foot. And there's nothing esoteric about it. You can derive these little vocabulary bits right from hip-hop beats and play them in ways that sound great right away over a swing groove. So we'll be back in the next chapter to talk about another aspect of jazz playing. For now, I just want to leave you with my customary call to action, which is visit 8020list.com to get a video like this emailed to you every week completely free. That's my sales pitch. Anyway guys, 8020 drummer, one love. We out. Did I seriously just make a smooching sound? I don't know, I'm going with it. So we'll be back. Yeah? Really? Holla! 8020 drummer back at you. What is up, guys? I actually mean that. I don't just say what is up like it's a... So, I actually don't... Oslo. Accept no substitute.